Diesel for We the People News, and you guys heard that 14th Amendment is illegally ratified. And I don't go into great details mainly because I just don't have time. So I found this to kind of explain and help you guys understand it a little bit better. Alrighty. Once again, always look around you, never straight forward. For the outside forces may want to commit harm upon you. What you can learn to protect yourself, then do so with our liberty and our inalienable rights. Alright, so this will give you kind of a little deal about it. Once again, this is a learning deal, and creating a little news with it, but it's majority of the learning deal. And if you have any questions, always converse into an attorney. Okay? Bye. Or bye. Here we go.
Is born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are a citizen of the United States. That's 14th Amendment, Section 1. It's actually a revision. That's why it's called a so-called 14th Amendment. The wide and diverse range of subject matter proposed to be voted upon, and the revisional effect which it would be necessarily have in our basic plan of government. The proposal is offered as a single amendment, but it obviously is multifarious. It does not give the people an opportunity to express approval or disapproval severally as to each major change suggested. And that's McFadden versus Jordan, 196 P2D 787. This is what an amendment is supposed to be, okay? Includes only the power to amend any section in such a manner that such amendment, if approved, would be complete in it within itself, relate to one subject, and not substantially affect any other section of articles of the Constitution, or require further amendments to the Constitution to accomplish its purpose. And that's Adams versus Gunter, 238 South 2D 824, Florida, 1970. Now let's go into what the 14th Amendment does. It violates the preamble, which defines the whole intent of all the powers granted to Congress by introducing a foreign member into the sovereign body. It is an ex post facto law, punishing Southerners in many ways for acts not necessarily illegal at the time of their commission. This is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett, of Utah Supreme Court, in the case Diet versus Turner, which is at 439 P2D 266, and so 1968. So, and I've got a bunch of them that are taken from this, by the way. It's a bill of attainder in its lesser form of a bill of pains and penalties, depriving all Southern slaveholders of property without trial. It deprived Southerners of property by unreasonable seizure and without just compensation, bringing Congress beyond the limitations set out by the 4th and 5th Articles of the Amendment. It lays prohibitions upon the states beyond those known to the original Constitution of the United States, and makes inroads upon the constitutions of the several states, encroaching upon the sovereignty belonging to the people of the several states.
I'm going to pause it here for a second. This right here, and that one Supreme Court ruling right there. Alright. This is the reason why, if you don't pay property taxes of $7,000 and your property is worth $200,000, they can come and confiscate your land, even though the original Constitution says they can't do it. Okay? This is the reason why you are forced, by threat of violence, to pay taxes. Because you are a slave. Alright? That's basically what this is saying. You are a slave. Okay? It's kind of like the drug law, you know. Again. They go after your money. But they blame it on something else. But they use the 14th Amendment to do so with it. Yep.
States, which is prohibited by the 10th Article and Amendment, the Bill of Rights. It created purely legislative tribunals without respect to the separation of powers, okay? And we'll talk about some of this stuff. We're going to show all sorts of evidence of it. It extended Congress martial law powers by allowing the emission of bills of credit. Okay? So this is all found in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett to the Utah Supreme Court, which is also in the case Diet versus Turner. So the so-called 14th Amendment changes property rights, civil rights, citizenship, taxes, apportionment, the debt, much more, okay? It's a revision, okay? And Congress does not have the authority to revise the Constitution, and they're just calling it amendment, which is typical of what these Satanists do, and so it's unconstitutional. There's the bills of credit right here. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They form a part of the public debt of the United States, the validity of which is solemnly established by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. That's U.S. Supreme Court, Juilliard versus Greenman. And so, again, those forced loans they're talking about are U.S. Treasury notes, but their legal tender and Federal Reserve notes are the same thing. They're also legal tender, and so they're bills of credit is what they are. So when you buy something with a Federal Reserve note, you're buying it with United States.
Okay, they said legal tender, right? Not lawful. Silver and gold is lawful tender. We are using banknotes. We are paying debt with debt, and hence is the reason why we have trillions of dollars in debt and growing. You can never pay debt with debt without going further in debt. And what has Congress done?
Credit. That's what you're doing with a $20 credit note. United States credit drawn on the privately held Federal Reserve Bank. The 14th Amendment was not ratified properly. The dissenting opinion asserts that the 14th Amendment is a part of the Constitution of the United States. While this same assertion has been made by the United States Supreme Court, that court has never held that the amendment was legally adopted. I cannot believe that any court in full possession of its faculties could honestly hold that the amendment was properly approved and adopted. And that's State versus Phillips. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. Okay, so prior to the 14th Amendment, the federal citizenship was derivative and dependent upon state citizenship, and after the 14th Amendment, it was paramount and dominant. And that's Colgate versus Harvey, again, U.S. Supreme Court. And so it turned turned citizenship in America into the opposite of what the founding fathers intended, and that's talked about in the United States versus Rhodes. The amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. Okay, it's unconstitutional. They changed all sorts of things. It's evidence that they, U.S. citizens, have not political rights, which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community, which is vested with any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States, but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. And that's People versus De La Guerra, California case, 1870.
So you need to rewind this a couple of times and listen to what he just said. Okay? U.S. citizens has no rights. Let that sink in. I didn't even know it's a Supreme Court ruling in California. They will eventually come up with the main Supreme Courts. And they said and I'm trying to remember, and it may be in here, that it was legal ratified, but the judge, that the Supreme Court justice that passed away in Alpine, Texas, and I can't think of his name, some of y'all may know, he did say on TV one time that they had to say that it was legal because it would put the courts in chaos, because there's been so many cases with the 14th Amendment, and all the laws and codes and statutes has been fit with the 14th Amendment. So our country would be actually in complete chaos if the Supreme Court actually went in there and changed it. Now, it would be a short time chaos, right? And it mainly would be the government would have their chaos. We, the people, would be just going on with everyday lives and not knowing what the deal is about going behind closed doors, what they're doing, because, well, we don't study. We are ignorant of our rights. Alright? And I hate to be blunt with y'all, but that's just exactly the way it is. We, the people, are ignorant. And they don't teach us this in school. And, and people just don't care about looking things up anyway. So, we've been living in peaceful times and got comfortable. And granted, it's easier nowadays to look up these things than it was, but these things are still hidden. Alright? And they definitely do not volunteer it, and they definitely lie to you. The first thing that, when it finally went to the Supreme Courts, of the main Supreme Courts, of the 9 farts, is they lied. They knew it was unconstitutional, and they still lied because it would have put the government in chaos. That's why they did it. And now look at where we're at now. We're losing our gun rights. We're losing our First Amendments. We're losing our Fourth Amendments. We're losing our Fifth Amendments. We're losing all kinds of rights because the Supreme Court decided they didn't want the government to be on chaos and say the 14th Amendment was illegally ratified. I'll shut up now.
So again, that's the converted, the unconstitutional U.S. citizens that they're talking about there. The term resident, okay, we're going to talk about residents here in a minute. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Okay, the only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. Okay, that's the only absolute and unqualified
Territory. Not state, but territory. Think about that. I've talked about how I think that we're under martial law, that all states are territories. And it's due to the 14th Amendment. And I play along with some of these other videos. They talk about territories being 100 miles inland in the state of Texas. But it's mostly because, in general, I'm slowly trying to wake you guys up and realize what is going on without overwhelming you, right? When I first heard about these things, I thought the people were nuts. But these nutty people were showing me case laws, Supreme Courts, and telling me to look these things up. I've had to look this up to realize that they wasn't so nutty after all. What's nutty is y'all being told to look these things up and don't do it and still call everybody else nutty. That's what's nutty. The famous words is, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, then you're just insane. Because you're always going to get the same results. If you want freedom, you got to fight for freedom. But if you want freedom and sit on your butt, you're not going to get it. Because you're going to just keep doing the same things by ignoring and calling everybody else rude names like sovereign citizens and this, that, here, and there. And people has called themselves that because they didn't fully understand the situation at that time. This was the time when everybody was breaking out, realizing that, wait a minute, we are slaves. So they didn't use the correct words, but they're using what little knowledge they have to get their rights back. Okay? Proceed forward for a minute.
Rate, okay? The term citizen of the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. I'm actually going to do a YouTube video here coming up pretty soon about how a U.S. citizen's a slave, okay? And so we're gonna go into that too, because and we'll go into that. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. Again, U.S. Supreme Court, Maxwell versus Dow. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined in privilege limit by Congress. Therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. That's Wheeling Steel Corporation versus Fox, U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. So, in essence, what he's basically saying that, look, U.S. citizens are slaves. And call it out. Subject to the United States. See, we have nothing to do with the United States. Alright? Me, per se, I live on the Texas land. Okay? I have no obligation to the country. Okay? We got to realize that. Okay, so when people came over back in earlier days, right? When they came onto the land, they went to a state. And they tried to put their foot down on us being state citizens, alright? And when they went through the process, up by the Statue of Liberty, I can't think of what island that was, but they wasn't U.S. citizens, they wasn't United States citizens. They was, at the time, I think they was New York citizens. Alright? Now, New Jersey, New York's been fighting over this property for I don't know how long, and I don't know if they actually ever settled it. But they've been fighting a long time for this. Okay? But at the time, I believe it was under the jurisdiction of New York. So they was New York citizens. They was not U.S. citizens. They was not a United States American or anything like that. It was just U.S. state citizens. Because the U.S. was a union that nobody has any ties to but the states. Anyway, I'm going to stop from there. This is Diesel for We the People News. If I don't see you soon, I'll see you later. Always, always, always look around you. Never just straight forward, because you never know what outside forces want to commit harm upon you. Like this video here. Getting a little understanding of the Supreme Courts and how the 14th Amendment really is putting us in slavery. Till next time. Bye, y'all.